Hello, welcome back. Let's conclude the Android shopping cart system, which we call the fragrance eShop. In the first part, we covered the data source, i.e. we embed a raw JSON into the Android project, and also the structure, where we look vividly into the layout files and the database, inclusively with the content provider. This time, we'll move further by calling appropriate data to view. We're going to create a cart system that keeps track of items passed into the cart tables with corresponding calculation of total price of all items added. Without much ado, let's dive straight to Android Studio and get started. We have a count package. In this count package, we have the badge drawable and its utilities. This is actually going to help to keep count of all items in the cart table. So we're going to actually use a grocery or a shopping cart icon, which we actually got from the drawable, the vector assets. You can get that, and we'll be building up on that. So let's get to look at the badge drawable. This extends the drawable, and we declare some fields: text size, the badge paint, the text paint from the paint class, and the rectangle. Also, we have a count with the boolean, that is the draw boolean. So let's get to see how we actually create that. We have a badge drawable constructor where we gave a text size of 8sp. That's the counter text right inside the circle, which is the badge. We'll have 8sp, and we instantiate the paint. You set the color to red, set the anti-alias to true, and the style to fill up the circle. You instantiate the text paint. You set the text color to white, the typeface to bold, the text size to the size we declared up there, which is 8sp, and set the anti-alias to true, and align the text to center. Now, you have to override a method called the draw method. Now we need to draw the circle. We instantiate the bounds by getting the bounds. We have a float of width and height, definitely, and you have to position the badge in the top right quadrant of the icon. Where we get the radius, we did some mathematical calculation here, and we got the center X and the center Y of this particular icon. So we get to draw the circle based on the center X, Y, the radius, and the badge paint attributes. After that, you draw the badge, you count the text inside the circle, which we did using this chunk. Now you need to set the count, i.e. the notifications to display, where you have the set count method that converts the string of the count to an integer and pass that to the mcount variable, which we actually declare right there, a string. Cool. Now you only draw a badge if there are notifications. If they are not, no need to draw a badge. So if there's nothing in the cart, you won't see a badge drawn around the shopping cart icon. So this is how you actually test for that. If count is greater than 0, you will draw. If not, please don't draw. That's what that depicts. An alpha must be overridden. Also, the set color filter and the get opacity. So let's get to look at the utilities that were used. In the set badge count, which is a starting void class method rather, we have the badge drawable. Now you need to use the drawable if possible, where you call on the IC badge. Let's get to look at that. The badge circle XML. Cool. This is where we get the shopping cart logo as the drawable, and we add an ID called notification, and you set a placeholder drawable as well, which is for the shopping cart black. We all get that through the vector asset and change the color. Majorly it comes at black. You can change the color to white, which you actually did here. So that gives us this icon, the shopping cart, which will actually stick right there at the top corner of the toolbar. Cool. I think we understand that. So now we can easily move down to our layout, to our activity, to actually bind the view, get the data. We'll majorly be using the cursor loader, which will actually help us to load data at the background without blocking the UI. So let's get started with that. In the main activity, this extends the app compact as usual, and now it implements the loader manager, the loader callbacks, passing the course database as the generic parameter. We have the recycler view initialized, inclusively with a fragrance adapter. We need an adapter to bind those views to. You have a fragrance loader, an integer initialized to 0, and you have the SQLite database too being called here, because we might use the object of the SQLite database. We set the notifications to 0 at start, because once you launch the application at first, the cart should be empty. In the onCreate method, we set the content view to the activity main. We've explained this in the first part, the layouts XMLs. You instantiate the fragrance DB helper, called DB helper, and now you get a writable database. You pass that to the MDB. So now your MDB is usable to actually call the database at any time. Cool. Initialize the recycler view, get its ID, set as fixed size to true. Now we need to get some resources by getting the configuration and the orientation. If the orientation is portrait, the layout manager, the grid layout manager will be 2. That's 2 grids while portrait. But once it's landscape, it gets to 4 grids. So that's what this is doing. And you still share the fragrance adapter. This time you set the recycler view to the fragrance adapter. So you set that and you trigger the init loader. This is very important in the onCreate. Once you trigger the init loader, the loader will start working. Now we instantiate the fetch count stacks. The fetch count stacks to execute. We'll get to look at that class. It's an inner class right there in the main activity. This class helps us to get the counter, to get how many items we have right there in the cart, so that it's actually going to draw that using the badge drawable. That's what that's going to do. In the onCreate options menu, we all know that the onCreate options menu is holding on to the toolbars, the menus right there at the top bar, the settings, the overflow menu, and so on. We call the menu main. We've talked about this earlier. And you get the notification menu item and it's layer drawable, where we get the action notifications based on the badge circle over here as the IC notifications. Cool. And you also get the drawable icon, so that you'll be able to update the layer drawable using the utilities to set the badge count, passing this class, the icon, and the notifications count as the parameter. So that's actually going to use the utilities. Cool. And you return true after a success. On option item selected, you get the ID. Which ID are you talking about? Because we only have one menu right there at the toolbar, and this is actually going to be the action notifications. Now we need to trigger an intent to pass that to the cart activity class. So that's why we instantiate that intent, and that's actually going to run anytime you click on the shopping cart icon right there at the toolbar. You return the on option item selected. Cool. Now you need to update the notifications badge anytime there is data or anytime you saved an item to the cart. So the M notification count gets the count at the present, because you need to keep tag. If there is one item, you need to draw out the badge. But if there is none, there's no need to draw. That's what this update notifications badge is actually doing. You can actually pass this into the on resume, so that any passed in item or any saved in item will actually trigger the update notifications badge. Cool. Anytime you implement the loader manager, you have to override some methods: the onCreate loader, the onload finished, and the onloader reset. So that's what you're actually doing here. you first, in the onCreate loader, you set your projection. That is the columns you are actually trying to query, the name, description, image price, and user rating. And after that, you have a loader that will execute the content provider's query method on a background thread. When you need to return a new cursor loader object, first parameter here is the parent activity context called this. The other one is the content URI, which is basically pointing at the fragrance table, because we also have the content URI for the cards table. The third parameter here is the columns we declared up there, which is the projection. We have the null to be the selection clause, null to be the selection argument, and null to be the sort order, since we are not sorting basically on different orders. Fine. In the onload finished, you need to swap the cursor based on the fragrance adapter object. We get to look at the fragrance adapter immediately after this main activity. In the unloaded reset, you swap the cursor to null. Cool. Now let's look at the inner class, which is the fetch count tax, and async tax to fetch the notifications count. This extends the async tax class, passing the void and an integer as a parameter. Now in this integer, which is you must override, you do that in background. And now let's get to see what we do in background. We have a count query, which we are actually passing as a string variable. In this query, you have to select all from the cards table, so that we'll be able to know how many items we have right there in the cards table. You call the cursor, and now we have an object of the DB, which we actually instantiated to get the writable database. You run the raw query, because this is a raw query. We are not actually using a content provider here. We are running it raw right there on the database, which takes in the count query as a parameter and the second parameter as null. Now we have an integer of the count, since we just want to get the total number of items of the cursor, because cursor is the result of any query database in Android. You have the cursor to get count. This is a method which you can use on the cursor object, and from that you have the total number as an integer passed into the count integer. You close the cursor and you return this count. This count is very, very important. So once you return that, this will always get reflected anytime you draw the drawer. That's you draw the badge rather. So cool. I think we've been able to cover much on the main activity, which is the launcher, where we get to see the grids of all items. Now we need an adapter that actually binds those data together. In the adapter, where we have to extend the recycler view and the fragrance adapter view order, we should be very familiar with adapter at this point. We have the cursor data object and the context, inclusively with an integer of an ID. We have an inner class called the view order, and this view order actually is going to do a lot. It's going to help us to attach data, so that anytime we are extending, probably we are creating a detailed activity from the adapter, we're going to actually get data passed to the data activity. So we don't have to query the database or call the content provider one more time, since we have data right there in the main activity. We just pass it using an intent. So that's what you can easily see right there when we call the view order, and we put some extras. These constants are created right there in the detail activity, so that you won't make mistakes when passing the keys. So these are the values when you get the item position and pass the name. We get to look at this when we actually used the fragrance. We actually did this when we used the fragrance class over here. Somewhere in the data, the fragrance class over here. So this is where we were able to get the name, description, image, URL, and so on back to the adapter. We have a constructor, a fragrance adapter. We instantiate the cursor, which we pass as a parameter here, and also the context. Now we have the view order that calls the layout, the fragrance card, that has the item to bind to. On bind view order, we need to bind data right there down to the view. Firstly, you need to move to the position, the first position you have in the cursor, because cursor starts from 0, as we all know, and you have to move to the position. And at the point of moving to the position, you get the column index, which is for each column, and get the appropriate data using the appropriate data type, probably int, probably string, probably double, and so on. So for that, you now pass them to a variable. The first is the ID, the second is the name, the description, just what we are expecting, the URL, price, and the user rating. If you notice, the user rating is int, the price is also int, and so on. Now you use the order to set the text to the appropriate name, because we've actually declared that right there over here in the view order, where we have the name, the user rating, description, price, and top name. We are also expecting the poster, which is the picture of that particular item. Now we have a constant, which is the link, the http boombox.ng/images/fragrance/ the only variable here is the image URL that continues to change for different items. So that's how we be able to concatenate that with the constant string. Cool. And we have a poster part. So we use glide to actually display that into the order thumbnail. Now on swap cursor, which we have here, we actually change the cursor. So we'll be able to identify if we have an old cursor or we have a new cursor. And you have to trigger the notified data set change when you are changing from an old cursor to a new cursor, so that you won't return the same cursor all over. So that's where you use the swap cursor, right there in the loader. We have the get item count and the get item. This is actually used right there in the view order class to get the position and pass the name. This helps us to call to the fragrance class, which we have here. I hope you understand that. So without this, we might not be able to interact with this fragrance class. So this helps us to interact with this fragrance class to get the appropriate data. And now we have the position, which we actually got from the adapter. Cool. From there, we can be able to set our grids, and we can see that displayed well. And on click of each grid, we have this intent to trigger to the detail activity and pass in the appropriate data, the name, description, price, image URL, and user rating, because we actually need this right there in the we need it in the detail activity. So that takes us to the detail activity. In the detail activity, that's where you get to have a lot to do, where you have to increment the, well, if you need more item, probably you need to order more than one item. You have the increment button, and also the method, you have the decrement, and this will be done, and calculations of the price will also be done, so on the fly. So we have to look at that vividly. These are the static strings we actually used to depict the keys from the adapter. And we have the image view, and we have the fragrance name, description, the fragrance image, likewise the rating, the double, price, and so on. Even we use the content resolver. We also call the SQLite database object. Fine. We also have our notifications count, so that this will actually be all around, not that it's only going to be triggered in the main activity. We can have it in the detail activity as well. Now we need to set the content view to the fragrance details. We've talked about the details layout in the first part of this video. We set the support action bar that set the display home as up enabled to true. Initialize the content resolver so that this will be usable. We can be able to easily access the provider with the content resolver. We also initialize the DB helper so that we'll get the writable database and pass that to the object of the SQLite database. We initialize the image view And now we got the intent. So we have the intent that started this activity, and the button, which is the button to cart, that's to add the cart. We need to initialize that as well. We initialize the cost view, that's to find the cost, the total cost. Now let's get to look at the intent that started this activity. So this is very good because sometimes this might return null. So you need to test for that there must be an extra of fragrance name which you're expecting. Now you get those intent back and pass them to the variable, and you try to tie them to their appropriate views. The first is the description, where you set the text to the description gotten over here. The fragrance name, we don't need to set it to any text, since we are going to actually set it to the title, which will sit at the toolbar, at the top bar. So that's what we did here, set title to the fragrance name. The price now, we initialize the text view. Now let's see the way we set the price. There's a decimal format, which is actually out of the box from Java, where we instantiate the decimal format the way we want it. We want the price to actually show in a double format, don't round it up to a whole number, since it's a price. Even dot something is still a price. These are cents. Now we set the text. We have a logo which we want it to be in dollar, and we pass the precision. Since we have an object from the decimal format called precision, you pass the format to the price. So we have a format already where we want the price to look like. Now we have the rating, which will actually come in a float. So we need to actually convert the double we got to string and pass to float, which will have it as a float f. So this is where we'll be able to set the rating bar to the value of the float, because rating bar actually identifies the float data type. So we need to convert a lot of conversion here. The same thing goes for the image. We have a static image, and now we add up to the fragrance image over here. So we'll be able to use glide to display that. Cool. Let's move ahead. Now we're going to test if the quantity is equals to 1. That's just one quantity. The total price should be the price we are having, since probably for you to click on an item, you've actually selected on one item. So that's the quantity should be default as 1. Now the display cost will be the total price of just the price, since it's just 1. The uncreate options menu, this is for the notification. The drawable, we've already talked about that in the main activity. The same thing triggers with the on option item selected. When you click on that, you move to the cart activity. In unpaused, we want to instantiate the fetch count tags so that we have that displayed. And now we're going to trigger 2 methods, increment and decrement, when we are trying to increase the quantity of the item we needed, or when we are trying to decrease that. In the process of increasing, the price should change, calculation should be done, and let's get to look at how we actually achieve that. The price, we got the intent from the value of the price. Now for the quantity, now once you increase, you add 1 to that, plus 1. So the display quantity will be the value of the quantity once you've actually increased it, because there's a display quantity view. Now the total price will be the quantity multiplied by the price. That's just it. So simple. Once we have a quantity of $10, a price of $10 rather, and the quantity is 2 times 10, $20. So you display the cost to the total price. The same thing goes with decrements. This time we use an if statement. If the quantity is greater than 1, the quantity will be minus 1. Decrease, and at the same time we did the calculation as well. Since it's a decreasing, it continues to calculate. Probably it's from 6 you want to decrease. Once it moves to 5, so 5 times the quantity, 5 times $10, 50. Once it moves to 4 times $10, 40. So that's just the aspects. Now the display quantity that we continue to see over here takes the number of items, and now we instantiate the quantity text view that displays the quantity, and we set the text to the value. The same thing goes for the display cost, which takes inward the total price, and we use the get currency instance, you can use two formats. We actually use the decimal format. Now we can use the get currency instance. This is actually going to default the currency to dollars, and we pass in the total price. So we set that text to the view, which is the cost text view. Now this is triggered when you add values to the cart. When you trigger the button to add to cart. When you trigger this button, we call on the content values, because we actually want to save some of the metadata of the items you are adding to the cart database, or to the cart table rather. Now we need some attributes. We need the name, the path to the image, the quantity you've selected, and the total price, at which multiply by the quantity. So that will be passed into the cart values, and we use the content resolver to insert those values into the content URI, which is basically for what? For the cart. And you have what? The cart values as the parameters. So this is what will actually be saved into the database. We have that set up. So you have a toast that there's a successful added to cart. Now, when we trigger add to cart, look at the add to cart, which is a view. We actually want a dialog, so that sometimes users might strike the add to cart by mistake. So there's going to be a dialog to confirm again. Are you actually adding to cart? Yes or no, or it's made by mistake. If it's by mistake, you click on no, so you get back to the view. But if you still want to go ahead, you click on yes. So that's where we create an alert dialog builder and set the message and the click listeners for the positive and negative buttons on the dialog. So set the message add to cart for positive, and for negative cancel. So we have to undo that appropriately as well in the add to cart. So when you use positive, it triggers the add values to cart method, which is this that actually add values to the cart, which is add to the cart table. But when it's negative, it actually dismisses the dialog and it's returned back to the view that it was earlier. We have the set notifications badge. We've explained this in the main activity. The same thing with the inner class, the fetch contacts. We've also done that. Now let's get to look at the cart activity and its adapter. In the cart activity, this extends the app compact. Now we still need a loader manager because we still want to fetch from the cart table the values we have there. We have the cart loader and we have the adapter, the recycler view, the total price, and the payment button. This is where we have to visualize the payment. We'll get to talk about the paper configuration later on, probably in the next part. So I'm going to leave that out for now. In the onCreate method, we call the layout cart. Cool. You set the recycler view to its corresponding view, which we have. You set the layout manager. We want the linear layout. You initialize the adapter and attach to the recycler view. Cool. We have an item touch helper, which we called. This is actually going to help you on swipe, so you can easily swipe right and left. So this overrides the unswiped method. This is called when the user swipes left or right on a view order. So once it swipes right or left, we call the get content resolver to delete. This is where we trigger the delete method. And also, you restart the loader to requery all the tags after a deletion. So that once it deletes, it requeries again and notice that the item has been reduced. That the get count on the cursor has been reduced, and it's also displayed that gracefully. So that's when you have that done. We get the loader manager initialized. This is the payment button for PayPal and an intent to the PayPal service. We'll get to talk about PayPal later on. The onCreate loader, because we are going to actually load to the adapter the items that sit right there in the cart table. So this is when we need a projection. I think we should be familiar with this by now. But this time we are focusing more on the cart table. You have the cart ID, the cart name, image, quantity, price, the total price. And you return the cursor loader. You point to the content URI cart, not the content URI of the fragrance. different. The projection and pass known as selection clause, arguments, and sort order. On load finish, you swap the cursor and you also calculate the total price passing the cursor as a parameter. On resume, you get the loader manager to restart the loader. So that's actually going to trigger, and so that will actually make that work perfectly. Now let's look at the calculate total, which takes the cursor as a parameter. We have the total price initialized as 0. This is a double format. Now a for loop, we are iterating through the cursor to get the count of the cursor, which is the argument here, and this is the iteration. Now we get the price. We only want to extract the price, whereby we get the column index and we pass that into the integer price. We need to move to the position because we are iterating, and in that process you get the double, you get the price. So we are getting the price of each item right there in the cursor, because cursor is actually the result of a query of a table. So now we are now iterating through, and the process we're extracting the prices of each item and we're passing that to the fragrance price, which is a double. In the process you continue to add up. This is an addition. That's the total price plus the fragrance price in the first iteration. In the second one, it added up again until it gets to false when the loop will be ended. So now the total price will have a real value. So you set, now we call the total cost view. We convert the price. We want it in dollars. So we'll get the currency instance and we set the text appropriately to the convert price variable. You return the total price. So anytime you call this calculate total, there's going to be a return price, which will trigger right there in the unload finish. This is when the loader finished, we get to get this done. So that's cool. On loader reset, you swap the cursor based on the cart adapter. We get to talk about the payment click. That's for the PayPal payment later on, and also the on-activity result of the PayPal. The last aspect we'll be looking now is the cart adapter, because we actually need to bind that also to a view. We have the same variables we've always have, the cursor and the context right there. The adapter, the cart adapter, which is a constructor, here we'll initialize the context. The view order we call the cart item, where we have the item to bind on. This is the layout file. And the unbind view order, we get to extract values from each columns of the tables, which is the cart table. The first is the cart ID, the name, image, quantity, and price. We pass that as an indices. These are indices for the tables, which are all in integer. We have to get the right location in the cursor by moving to the position. And now you need to determine the values you wanted from the data. So that's when we extract the real value from the index, from the position. So you get the int of the ID for the fragrance name, you get the string. That's when you get the real data type, the string, the integer, and the double. You pass them into the appropriate variable with their corresponding data type. So now we need to set those values to views, where we set the values right here to the appropriate views. The same thing goes with the picture. We just glide to actually load that. Cool. We have that set. We have the get item count to get the total count of the values of the items in the cursor. So that's once you trigger this, is actually going to return the total of the items in the cursor. The same thing goes for the swap cursor, where you get to check if the cursor is the same as the previous cursor, and to know if it's new or old, to trigger the notified data set change. We always have an inner class in an adapter when we deal with recycler view. So even from here, you can extend more from the cart adapter. You can extend more from the cart activity to another activity, and you still have data to use. You don't have to query the database one more time. So that's where we initialize the appropriate view here, the name, quantity, price, image, right there in the cart view order constructor. I hope we understand this. It's quite cumbersome, cool, but I've been able to dissect every aspect of it, so you should be able to have a full grip of it. If you have any question, any problem whatsoever, please leave a comment right there in the comment section of this video. And I will implore you also to lay your hands on the first part. I'll be sharing the source code at this point, and we'll be wrapping up with the PayPal integration. This is actually going to be the icing on the cake to actually make payments integration work perfectly. We'll be using PayPal because PayPal is, to me, widely acceptable. Before I go, I would like to look at the manifest, the metadata of your application. We need to lock in the detail activity. We use the detail activity. We use the cart activity, and also point them back to the parents, which is the main activity. This is for Android version, which are lower version, takes them back to the parents, the main activity. So the up button will be able to go back to the main activity. We've talked about the provider in the first part. So at this point in time, you should have your application set and ready. We actually use internet and read phone state here when we talk about PayPal, because at that point we need to interact with the PayPal service. So with this now, I'm done for the fragrance cart eShop system. So thank you guys for hanging out with me throughout this tutorial, and I really appreciate your kind gesture and your prompt response, and also your comments. They are so helpful. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll be uploading the source code, and I'll be sharing the GitHub link with you right there in the description of this video. Thank you guys one more time. Have a blessed time. Bye bye.